Hey, Wholeness, welcome. Josh Dippold here. And before we get started with today's event, I just invite you all to, if you're in a comfortable position already, that's great. If not, just spend a moment and let's take the 3 breath highway. So this is just being fully present for 3 breaths. Every moment of the inhale, every moment of the pause, every moment of the exhale and the pause, and repeat. Being with the breath, knowing the breath every moment. Vividly, distinctly, penetratively knowing the breath. Okay, when you're ready, open your eyes. And today's event I've titled, and thank you for the hearts. Today's event I've entitled Exploring Potential Meditative States for Right Effort. I plan to list quite a bit of meditative states, both quote positive, quote negative, and otherwise, along with a broader, perhaps at times experimental exploration of right effort to help dig into some more specifics on eradicating and preventing unskillful, unwholesome, unhelpful states while maintaining and creating skillful, wholesome, and helpful states. So that's what this is. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Buddhist notion of right effort, on the Eightfold Path for meditation, there's right effort or whole effort or wise effort, and then whatever you want to use for the word right. Right effort, and then right mindfulness, right concentration, or right samadhi. And we hear a lot about mindfulness these days, and even starting to get more about samadhi and jhana and things like this, and concentration. But effort, So I want to do a disclaimer here before we start. So this is going to be and by the way, I've got my notes here. So I made these on retreat when I was offline and had a lot of time. So I get to use my notes today. So please don't let that distract you visually from what I'm about to say. Also, this is going to be really information dense. So those of you who don't like that, sorry about this one. Do more maybe heart-based stuff later. So even though this is going to be really a blast probably of information, you can come back to it on the recording anytime and slow it down and revisit it if it's just too much. So that's the nice thing about recording. So this is going to be an experimentative exploration to maybe push what's accepted and known of this. So please use discernment as ever with anything. And some of these may or may not be skillful depending on the situation, and ideally emerge from or with wisdom. So hopefully you'll both use wisdom to have these things emerge, these qualities, and hopefully some of these qualities will aid in wisdom emerging too. And then please use your own wisdom for discernment around these as well. So before I get into listing a bunch of stuff, and the classic images for, well, even before I get into the classic images for what is right effort, I always wondered, not always, but why is the Buddha kind of not giving specifics on this, from what I understand. Right effort, it's great though. This is probably all we need. And I won't speculate, but I will, like I said in the description, we want to eradicate akusala is the Pali word. So that's like unwholesome, unskillful, unhelpful states. So eradicate those. That's really, that's my interpretation of that. But that's pretty strong language. Get rid of them. How do we cut those out? And I'm not talking about being adverse to things and not being averse. I'm saying, okay, this is not helpful. Get rid of it. How do I, it's here. What do I do with it? How do I not have it here because it's not It's not helping anything. It's not helping me, not helping anyone else, especially in the long term. And then preventing unhelpful, unskillful, unwholesome states from re-arising or being there to begin with. And then we've got the positive side. So we've got the ones that are already here, the helpful states, the skillful states. How do we maintain those and then develop those? And then also, how do we generate new helpful, skillful states? And while this is in a context, a meditative context, I think this applies to our everyday life as well, of course. So, but that doesn't give us specifics on what those are or how to go about them. And I would love to speculate on why why it's kind of vague like that, but I'll spare you my speculations on that because I don't know if it's helpful now. So the two similes that are given that I find really beautiful and helpful, and instead of giving a long detailed verbal explanation, this image of a quail, okay? So a quail is a bird that would probably fit in your hand, depending on the size and where you are in the world. And if you hold it too tight, you will crush and kill it. But if you hold it too loose, it will fly away. So in the same way, effort in meditation, if we're too tight, it will crush and not be helpful. If it's too loose, then the attention and meditation can go anywhere. That's probably not all that helpful. So the other one is the famous lute, which is a stringed instrument where you can just say, I don't even know if it's a lute, whatever, but it works for most stringed instruments, I'd imagine. So if you tune it too tight, we all know how that sounds. If you tune it too loose, it sounds the opposite. But when you tune it just right, well, then you can play music on it. So these are the common things. Okay, now, determination. So this is a thing I think that comes into effort too. Like having a healthy, useful determination can be very helpful, I think, and sticking to that determination and not just straying from it. So it's important, though, to set the right determination. It can be as simple and straightforward and pretty much acknowledged is the breath. If you're doing breath meditation, you stay with the breath. You're with the breath, you know the breath. You penetrate into the breath, you know the breath distinctively. So this is fairly straightforward, clear determination that goes right along with the meditation. So other people can have other determinations, like, may I realize full awakening and be free. That's a very beautiful, high-minded determination. And there's different strategies for sticking with that. Just make sure your determination is for your own benefit and ideally for others' benefit too, everyone's, and especially in the long term. That would be a suggestion. Okay, now on to the unhelpful, unpleasant states. Actually, there's a category. Okay, there's 4 different ways of helpful and pleasant and unhelpful. And so we want to get states that are helpful and pleasant. Everybody will agree with that. Everybody wants a helpful state as long as it's pleasant. So there's no contention on that. But the other beneficial one is something that's unpleasant, yet it's helpful. Now, these are the ones that we normally wouldn't prefer, but because they're helpful, it makes sense to be okay with the unpleasantness and not try to do something unhelpful to get away from the unpleasantness, right? And then, of course, we don't want the unhelpful pleasant states either, even though they might be pleasant. They're not helpful, so this isn't going to benefit us or anyone else really in the long term. And then, of course, the bottom of the barrel that we can agree to, that we don't want unhelpful, unpleasant. All right. And Iga says, hello, Josh, and friends. Hello, Iga, if I'm saying that right. All right. So now what I'm calling negative here, these are states that may or may not be helpful depending on the situation. I'm put air quotes here for negative because that's normally how we perceive these, but maybe some of these could actually be more positive depending on what kind of situation we're in. But maybe not, especially with these first ones. The 5 hindrances, the taints and the cankers, greed, ill will, and ignorance. These are the hugest ones to eradicate by far. And I think all that's wrong and not helpful with existence, society, myself, others, whatever, but how do we go about eradicating these in the most helpful, optimal ways. So greed, can be countered with generosity. That is the classic antidote to greed. Ill will, actually wishing harm upon another, or having that thought or inclination arise and then actually seeing it, and instead of disapproving of it, approving of it and saying it's okay for me to hate this person or want to wish them harm. That's ill will, and that is a poison, and it's an unwholesome root, and it needs to be eradicated. So one way it can be eradicated is actually use the same energy to turn it back on itself. So slaying ill will, it's said to slay ill will. So instead of kind of suppress that energy, can turn it back to cancel it out. But the more common classic one against to remedy ill will, hatred, and even lots of forms of anger, I'd say, is loving kindness. It's and we'll see how things come up in loving kindness that are actually the opposite, but they're just seen. They're there to come up, to be seen and known, and purified, if I may use that word. Loving kindness, well-wishing, unstoppable friendliness, just the absence, or we can just say the absence of ill will, non-ill will. And then, of course, delusion and ignorance. Delusion not in the psychological diagnosis of delusion, but in just ignorant, not knowing what we don't know, having the wrong view, these type of things. And, of course, wisdom counteracts and is the classic remedy to ignorance and delusion. So there's three conceits. There's this: I'm better than you, I'm not as good as you. That's superior conceit and inferior conceit. We don't normally think of inferior conceit as conceit, but me wallowing and think I'm not as good as this person or another. That's conceit too. And then there's comparison conceit, or just thinking I'm just as good as that guy, I'm just as good as that gal. I'm just as good as they are. But we all have our unique things to bring to the table, and we know that comparison with certain things in a certain way, especially when we're comparing ourselves to others, it's probably not the best use of our pattern recognition and discernment skills, I would say. That's a whole other talk on itself, and talked a little bit about conceit before. And then we have these defilements: craving and sensuality, and craving for sense pleasures. We're all going to experience sense pleasures, really, whether we want to or not. That's just part of being human. But to go out of my way to that's all I do with my whole life, is just, where am I going to get the next beautiful sight, delicious taste, smell? And I just want that all the time. And, in and of itself, I think it's not all that harmful. But, what is the best use of our time? Is it just chasing sense pleasures, and constantly craving those and wanting that, and thinking that, and the really bad part is thinking that's going to lead to some long-lasting satisfaction and happiness. It's just a quick fix. There's some that are more socially acceptable and other ones that aren't so much. But at the end of the day, do we want to, where is the higher happiness here, right? If you could forgo a lower happiness for a higher happiness, would you do it? Okay, and then becoming, this is the one that's kind of confusing, I think. It's me just thinking about what I want to become in the future. I just want to be this. I want to become this, and, turn into this. And this is not to be confused with aspirations, right? So there can be a healthy aspiration to be a benefit to myself and others, And becoming, I feel, in a way, if I'm getting this right, it has more to do with me and my ego and self-gratification and service to self. A lot of times, probably not saying that the best way, but that's one way to look at it. And I've already said ignorance. Okay, here comes rapid fire then. We've got pain, sorrow, grief, lamentation, despair, desperation, deception, deceit. I wonder if duplicity's in there. Delusion, I've said. Dumb or dumbness, dumbing down. Deafness, defeat, denial. A lot of D's, right? Dismal, dismalness, darkness, dimness, dullness. That goes along with sloth and torpor, the 5 hindrances, which I'll go back to. Disrespect. Big one for guys, right? Disrespect. Depression. Prolonged depression, right? Especially if there's a choice, I think. Unhelpful shame, blame, and guilt, the ones that are unhelpful. Judgmentalism and unhelpful worldly ways. And this notion of there's these restlessness is one of the hindrances, and sloth and torpor, which is fancy words, old antiquated words for dullness, lethargy, laziness. And then I've already mentioned greed and ill will. And then the last one is doubt. So doubt can be a huge hindrance. And that's a whole nother topic on its own. And we're not talking about the doubt that can lead questioning things in order to lead to wisdom, but doubt that doesn't have any value, that it's not legitimate. These things like this, without just writing it off without any investigation, right? Or our faith. Faith is also needed to balance wisdom too, because there's some things that are so inspiring, can be so helpful, even though we don't have direct knowledge of something yet. We can be inspired and have faith that something better and more wholesome and skillful is possible, and we can look out to our friends and teachers to inspire faith, or historical figures, maybe ancestors, whatever we do to inspire faith for skillfulness. This notion of the I am conceit, and this is an interesting one because this flies in the face kind of Brahminical teachings. And I know there's some spiritual teachings with the I am, but the Buddha was kind of an iconoclast in saying the I am is the greatest conceit. And my take meaning this is just this, I am this, I am that. It's almost like a God complex in a way. I can see its helpfulness sometimes, but what about others? What about the well-being of all? And yes, we could say my heart beats in the heart of all. I am everything, but I'm also nothing. So one is love, one is wisdom, but does it have to involve this huge I amness? Why can't it just be the qualities that the heart already knows is helpful, and the qualities that the heart is working towards and training towards. Okay, now we get to the positive, and there's some overlaps here, but I'll just list these. And here's some questions: what emotions fit here? And also with the negative, what emotions I would say are negative, what emotions are positive, and when can they be vice versa too? So we've got these beautiful states like the Brahma Viharas, or what's called the four immeasurables of loving kindness, compassion, and these heart qualities of sympathetic joy, being happy for other people's happiness, rejoicing, altruistic joy, and vicarious joy, being, living through other people's joy. So it increases our chances of happiness a lot. And then equanimity, this even keel, balance, grandparently happiness, that we know we want the best for those that we want the best for, and yet we can't live their life for them. They have to make their own choices, and we're all responsible for what we think, say, and do, right? Emptiness, a lot of people might not think that's a positive quality, but empty of what, I would say, what about empty of any kind of ill will, empty of all these unhelpful qualities, empty of burdens and troubles, without denying anything, right? Without pretending something isn't there, that's challenging, without bypassing anything, emptiness. And so without extolling the virtues of emptiness, I'll go on here because we're already almost 20 minutes in. Letting go and relinquishment, putting it down, let that stuff go, giving up. Can be, we think of, letting go sometimes as a loss, but what about something that's really not serving us? And another quick story before I continue here, I think around effort. It's kind of a newer classic teaching story. Okay, I'm going down a street. I fall into a hole. I don't know what happened. I just fell into a hole. I get up. I go back. So then I come back. I go down the same street. This time I see the hole in the street, yet I still walk into the hole and fall into the hole. Okay. Then the third time, I see the hole, but this time I'm able to walk around the hole and I don't fall in the hole. And then the fourth time, I go down a different street. So this can be interpreted plenty of ways. I mean, I'm sure, probably like you, like when I heard it, it just resonated on various levels that I really didn't, couldn't pinpoint with language, but it made a lot of sense on various levels. So we have the protective meditations, Buddhanusati. This means recollection of the Buddha. The Buddha had different titles, and you can just pick one of those and recollect. One of the most famous ones is Arhat, enlightened and worthy of gifts, worthy of offerings. Which, by the way, here's a little plug, because we're supposed to do this with the Insight Timer live events. That you guys are most welcome to donate, and I appreciate all those who have already. Even though there's not too many of them anymore, I still appreciate those things. Thank you. Protective meditations. So that's the next one's death. So, why would death be in a protective meditation? I'll let you contemplate that. But I won't go into that now. I've already given some talks on that and stuff. And of course, I already mentioned the 4 Brahma Viharas. So then there's 5 daily reflections too. And while these seem negative, like Debbie Downers on the surface, these are about being in alignment with the truth of the way things actually are. So when they do come and we do experience them, there's not a huge shock anymore. We're already prepared to deal with them. We're not trying to deny or push them away. And these are simply old age, sickness, death, separation. I'm paraphrasing here, that everything we hold dear and love will be separated from us. That's just the nature of this until we go beyond it, right? At least temporarily. And then self-responsibility, what I do and say and think with intention, if there's an intentionality behind those actions in that speech, then it's going to have consequences due to causality. Nothing happens randomly. Skillful actions tend to have skillful results, and I'm oversimplifying here, but unskillful actions tend to have unskillful results, especially those are done intentionally. And then we have these 40 meditation objects that are in the Abhidhamma, and Visuddhimagga, and we've got 10 kasinas, and I don't think I've listed all those. Oh yeah, so we have the 4 elements, 4 colors, and light, space, and then there's 10 ways a corpse decomposes. So this is foulness meditation. So this is a classic antidote to lust, meditating on foulness, but be careful, because some people can fall into, get really grossed out and disgusted by it, where they, it's not helpful. So realize if you do these various ways of visualizing your own corpse decomposing, then don't get too grossed out by it, and where it leads to something that's not helpful. But it is an antidote to too much lust too. There's other ways to do asubha. It's called foulness meditation. There's 10 recollections here on the Buddha, the Dhamma. So Buddha being fully awakened one. Dhamma, the truth of the way things are, the teachings of the Buddha, and the Sangha. On various levels, this can mean the monastic community, it can mean the lay community, but it can also mean just our relationships, how I'm relating to the world, all of our relationships, all the people we associate with in a way, in a more loose kind of modern way, I guess. Then we've got morality, ethics, generosity, the qualities of the devas. You think about heavenly beings, whether you believe in that stuff or not, we still have these notions of what that may be like. And there's probably a more formal list of these. I've already mentioned death, mindfulness of the body, huge. Breathing, mindfulness of breath, anapanasati, huge practice. And peace. How much do we need peace? Pretty much always. And I think especially in the Americas, if you're in the Americas right now, perhaps. Probably a lot of other parts of the world too, right? The 4 immeasurables, I've already mentioned those, the Brahma Viharas. The 4 formless jhanas, these are the of boundless space, boundless consciousness, boundless no thingness or nothingness, and then the most subtle neither perception nor non-perception. And of course, I don't comment much on the jhanas because there's a lot of different ideas about that, what constitutes jhana and what doesn't. So just stick to the jhanic factors, getting the jhanic factors online and temporarily suppressing the hindrances. That's, I think, pretty much everybody agrees on that. Then there's the loathsomeness of food, which is real interesting, So I haven't done this practice so much. So loathing food, which is really interesting. I hope nobody starves to death doing that one. But I can see the benefit in some other people who are completely attached and craving food all the time, right? And it's not anyway, I can't speak on this because I haven't done this. Then the 4 elements, I think I already mentioned those, yeah. There's 10 perceptions for illness. So this is real interesting. During the lockdowns, this was making the rounds. And this is one little sutta that's said to develop these perceptions when one is ill. And this is impermanence, anicca. So changeability, that nothing stays the same forever. The other one is not self. So this is anatta. That's a whole nother huge teaching that I don't want to go into right now. The unlovely and impurity, this is a subha that I talked about before. So actually meditating on the unlovely and the impure things. So, and then abandoning. So what's worthy of being abandoned? What's the benefits of abandoning things? Then developing the perception of danger, but, in a wholesome way, not being complete fear all the time, right? Just realizing the helpfulness of knowing danger and what's dangerous. Dispassion, not being completely inflamed by our passions and having a helpful, wholesome cooling of things. And that way we won't be led around by the nose, by whatever whims we have. And people are definitely subject to control, I think, with their passions, and it can lead them into ruin as well. And I'm not talking about, don't be enthusiastic about various wholesome things, but remember, these are also in the context of illness. Cessation, ending. So imagine all the unhelpful things ceasing, suffering, stress, cease. So that completely ceasing. So non-delight or disenchantment. So we don't become enchanted by things that will lead us astray, that will not be for our benefit, disenchantment with the world, especially. So the worldly ways. Wishlessness, this goes along with, if you don't have any wishes, well, then you already have all your wishes fulfilled in a way, right? Like, and then what we really want, again, and nothing really wrong in and of that self, I guess, because it depends what you want. But the more we want, the more that people are trying to take advantage of one, they will see that, and then they'll could potentially try, if they're not wholesome and ethical, use that to manipulate you and control you, because then they know what you're after and what you want, and then they will play to that to their advantage, and then it just turns into more games and things like this. And the last one of these 10 perceptions for illness is anapanasati, so mindfulness of breathing. And then we go into things like momentary concentration, access concentration, and then jhana concentration, which I mentioned earlier. These are stages, right? And then the jhanic factors, which you have vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha, and ekagata. So basically, applying attention, sustaining attention, and then rapture. Lots of really pleasant feelings in the body, right? And then sukha is happiness, and then one-pointedness, single-pointedness, which I don't know if that's the right translation for it this time, so I'll just skip that. There's various samadhis that are mentioned, I think, especially in the Mahayana. So there's so many different samadhis mentioned, but I won't go into that either. Then there's 7 factors of enlightenment. We've got mindfulness, investigation, joy, tranquility. Then energies in there too. Tranquility, samadhi, and equanimity. We have the 5 lots of lists, right? We have 5 faculties, spiritual faculties, which can turn into the 5 powers when fully developed. We've got mindfulness, faith, which balances wisdom, and then we've got energy and samadhi that balance each other too. And then we have the 4 roads to spiritual power, the Iddhipada, that Chanda, Virya, Chitta, and Vimamsa. So those are, Chanda is a skillful, wholesome desire. So it's not like, oh, I want ice cream really bad. It's that I want to use this built-in notion of wanting something, to use it to have a uplifting goal and enthusiasm and desire for something that's helpful and wholesome. Virya, energy, just oversimplified. Chitta, the heart mind, and then Vimamsa is investigation. These are oversimplifying. Peter has a question. Yes, Peter, please, at any time. Everybody, you guys have free reign in the chat here. Just go whatever you want, and I will see if I can answer these or mention them if there's any time left. And was wanting to wrap this up at 30 minutes, but we're not too far behind here. So, and then we have some of my favorite here, these lists of beautiful mind states. We've got faith, I mentioned, mindfulness, moral shame, and or dread and moral fear. These are Hiri and Ottappa. So, but these are the helpful ones, right? We're not talking about the shame where I'm ashamed of something for the rest of my life and I can't let it go and I'm constantly in shame, or that I'm constantly in fear and I can't get out of it. This is something that I've done something, and now it's a helpful, wholesome reminder that I feel shame, but it's due to not that I want to perpetuate the shame. It's there to prevent that action from happening again, so I don't harm myself and others, because I've seen what I've done, and I've seen how it's harmed myself and others, and I don't want to do that again. So that moral shame is there as a protector, not as something to drag me down, to hurt me and to hold me back, but actually to uplift and protect me and others. So this is a helpful reminder that we know from experience, right? That it's there to help us and not hinder us. It will help support wholesome, helpful actions. Same way with fear, moral fear, that if I do this because I know this will cause an outcome that I don't want, that's not going to be helpful for me and others, So this is Hiri and Ottappa, moral shame, moral fear. Then we have non-greed, non-hatred, equanimity, tranquility, lightness, and agility. These are beautiful mind states. So a lightness of mind and agility. Agility means I can do something really easily and have a skill at it. Malleability. This is a classic word that's worked with certain types of metals, like gold is very malleable. And let's see, like iron is not. It takes a great deal of heat and force to manipulate iron, but gold, as far as metals go, it's a lot softer. It's a lot easier to spread out and bend and work with and use. And then we have wieldiness, which is using, if you can wield a sword, that means you can use it quite well, right? And then, it's quite easy to move around. Proficiency, of course, doing something very well on a high level. And then straightforwardness. In some cultures, this is a little bit more not at the cultural forefront, while other cultures, they value straightforwardness, So it depends. But for me, I think overall, being straightforward instead of beating around the bush and hemming and hawing and saying one thing when I mean another and trying to go around and around things, just easier to be, but it has to be done the right way, the right time, and for the right reasons. And then wisdom, of course. Wisdom, can't say enough about that. So those are the ones of positive and negative. And so I just have a few nuanced, subtle, and maybe theoretical, experimental ones that until this can be seen and known for oneself. So don't hold me to this. I'm just throwing some stuff out here because I don't see and know this for myself. These are higher level things I just want to mention. That are mentioned in the Visuddhimagga. And this is the death moment consciousness followed by the rebirth rebirth linking consciousness. And so these are things that can be discerned in certain types of Vipassana practice from one's, it's said, and I've met practitioners who say they've done this and they've discerned this in past lives, right? And maybe they can even discern that in this very life. And then some that say that they can even see into potential future lives in those moments there too. So, and maybe even see this in others, which is so super profound and rare these days, if that is the case. And there's no need for me to believe it or disbelieve it. It's just very inspiring to know that there are people in this very life that are practicing very deeply and sincerely and cataloging these things and knowing techniques to go about this and the stages to get to these type of things, if I'm getting that right. Of course, then there's bhavanga, which is known as a resting consciousness, where there's, and I don't even know how to explain this, so I won't. But the Pali word is bhavanga, and I think one of the translations is a resting consciousness, which is really I don't know what to say about it. And then there's this notion that some meditation teachers talk about, just holding an object in awareness. So if I just, I want to meditate on my mouse cursor, so I would just bring that up. I would visualize it, mouse cursor, maybe even use the word, and just have that in my awareness and see what the experience is like holding that. I mean, this is a ridiculous example. It's not helpful, but, so one would be investigating deeply and profound things like perception itself, investigating the dharmic factor of perception, not what we're perceiving, not that perception is happening, but what is perception and how does it work? Just holding that in awareness and seeing what material comes up. But again, I don't know if I can advise this too much, because if you want to practice systematically, this is probably, unless you're at that point on a certain systematic level, then, maybe it's not helpful. But for those who really want to see the power of investigation, the power of the mind, and seeing what's possible in a safe and wholesome way, then, maybe that might be something to experiment with. You can, hold a memory in awareness. You can hold any of the qualities that I mentioned in awareness and see what the experience is as well. Now, whether I recommend you do that or not, I don't know, but it's possible. So, all right, guys, I had a lot more than I thought I was going to say here, but it's been lovely, and I appreciate all you being here. And thanks so much. And well, if there's anything left or any questions, I don't know if Peter's still here with the question, but give a few more moments. If anybody else has anything, then now's the time to do it. Yes, absolutely. Leslie says perception is experience, not belief. Yeah, the kind of perception I'm talking about is an identification, right? I see a screen. It's a label. It's a recognition. I recognize this as a screen. I've seen it before. It's been labeled a screen, but actuality, and on a deeper level, it's actually just color, various colors and light and form, right? It's just been given the label a screen. And then once I've labeled a screen, then I think I know what that is, a computer screen, right? But if we really were to investigate it deeper and deeper and deeper, it goes, some practitioners would say you can get down to discerning the ultimate materiality of it, which are these indivisible particles called kalapas that have their own characteristics that are flashing in and out of existence so fast. But I don't know that from experience because I'm not there. But what I can see is that there are, like an LCD, the resolution, if I zoom way in, used to be able to see the little pixels in the screen. Now the higher resolution, how shiny it is, how dirty it is, what kind of brightness there is, what the color spectrum, so on and on and on and on. I can go deep, and we don't really need to go into all that. Just knowing that once we identify something and label it, yes, and we need that too. It's helpful, because if I had to investigate it in depth every time I saw it, I would never get anything done. It would be weird, and I would be ostracized from society and wouldn't be able to interact with anybody. So perceptions can be very helpful in that sense. But yeah, this recognition Leslie says, faith is a belief system rather than a true experience without labels. Okay, this is really important too. So the faith I'm talking about is not a belief, right? So beliefs are this is where we often get confused with faith and belief. Belief, I don't find really that helpful at all. There's really not much reason for me to believe or disbelieve anything. It's kind of unnecessary. It takes a lot of emotional investment that when something flies in the face of it and truth comes along, well, then that belief can either I have to put more energy into maintaining that belief, or it gets completely shattered and I kind of break down and get devastated. And, the truth just destroyed the world I used to live in. And so instead of belief, I use information, take everything as information. I don't have to believe it or disbelieve it. It's easy to let go of, easy to add new things. Now, faith, what I'm talking about with faith is more, there I can see something, but I don't know it for myself yet. But I can already tell that somehow this is going to benefit. I know people in my life that have benefited from it, and I look at these people and I'm inspired, and I want to be like them. I want to work towards the qualities they have, even though I don't have it now. I want to be able to eventually verify that for myself. So then we can get into verified faith. It's not blind faith. I'm not talking about blind faith here. I'm talking about like a inspired faith that we can see where we want to be or see others and see how helpful that is in like associate with them, associate with the wise, have faith that the wise are being helpful, that they can help us, that they know something of benefit, and that it's a worthwhile thing, even though I'm not able to be like that now. But there is a potential, just like them, to then go and verify what they know, what they experience, what they realize, what they bring to the world. I don't have right now, and I'm far from that. But according to them, that I can do these things, and then I can have these qualities too, and be like this. So then we can actually verify that faith. So that's what I mean more by faith, Very important distinction, because we get these things mixed. We can not conflate, but this is what I mean by faith and belief. Yeah. It is simple and pure without definition. Very good point too here. Because it's the balancing to wisdom. So I was getting too much on the wisdom side here. It is pure and simple. I just heard this story about someone, a venerable that was foremost in faith. He would just stare at the Buddha. That's what he was known for. Every single chance he got, he would just stare at the Buddha. And I won't go into the whole story what the Buddha did to and how that played out, but it's which kind of needs to be added on to that story to make it to make it make sense and do the full teaching. But I won't give that now. All right. Well, I appreciate those comments, Leslie, and thank you all for joining. And I'll wrap this up now. So you all be well, and may you balance all your quote unquote negative and positive qualities, and gain wisdom and faith in all the optimal states for the wisest, right effort that you can muster, for yourself and for all beings everywhere. May all beings everywhere realize awakening and be free.